The national portion of the real estate exam will frequently test your understanding of how appraisers determine value through several core principles that dictate market behavior. We have to start with the principle of substitution because it is the bedrock of the entire appraisal process and specifically the sales comparison approach. The exam will frame this by describing a buyer who is looking at two nearly identical properties and chooses the one with the lower price. This demonstrates that the value of a property is set by the cost of acquiring an equally desirable substitute. You must remember that substitution applies to all three appraisal methods. If you can build a new house for less than buying an existing one, the principle of substitution caps the value of the existing home. Contribution is another high-priority topic that often appears as a trick question involving home improvements. The exam might describe a homeowner who installs a $60,000 swimming pool and then feels frustrated when the appraiser only adds $15,000 to the property value. This is the principle of contribution, which states that the value of any component of a property is determined by what it adds to the whole, or what its absence detracts from the whole. It is never determined by the actual cost of the labor and materials. On the test, if you see a scenario where cost does not equal value, you are almost certainly looking for the principle of contribution. Anticipation is the principle that value is created by the expectation of benefits to be derived in the future. This is most relevant when discussing the income approach for commercial properties or residential rentals. If a rumor spreads that a major highway exit will be built next to a quiet piece of land, the value of that land increases immediately because of the anticipation of future commercial utility. The exam wants you to recognize that value is not just about what a property does today, but what the market expects it to do tomorrow. Conformity suggests that maximum value is realized when there is a reasonable degree of social and economic homogeneity in the neighborhood. This means houses should be relatively similar in style, age, and size to protect their value. When this balance is broken, we see the principles of progression and regression. Regression is the most common exam scenario where a massive, expensive custom home is built in a neighborhood of modest starter homes. The smaller, less expensive homes will pull the value of the larger home down. Conversely, progression occurs when a smaller, neglected property sees its value increase because it is surrounded by high-end, well-maintained estates. The larger homes pull the value of the smaller home up. A major trap to avoid is confusing the principle of contribution with the principle of substitution. Remember that substitution is about the whole property and choosing between alternatives, while contribution is about individual features or improvements within a single property. To keep these straight during the exam, use the mental shortcut that substitution is the buyer's choice between two houses, while contribution is the buyer's choice of whether an upgrade is worth the extra money. Another common confusion point is thinking that regression and progression are separate from conformity, when they are actually the result of a lack of conformity. The exam will often use wordy scenarios to mask these concepts. If a question asks why an appraiser uses recent sales from the last 6 months rather than sales from 3 years ago, they are testing substitution because the buyer's current alternatives are what matter. If they ask why a garage adds more value in a snowy climate than in a tropical one, they are testing contribution. Focus on the underlying motivation of the buyer in the scenario provided. If the buyer is looking forward, it is anticipation. If the buyer is looking at the neighbors, it is progression or regression. Keeping these distinctions clear will ensure you can navigate the appraisal section of the national exam with confidence and precision.